Welcome to the Hometown Television Halloween Special, brought to you by Hometown Television and Paper Mill Playhouse. Paper Mill Playhouse Ghost Stories. Paper Mill Playhouse has a long history, starting in 1794, as it was an actual paper mill. Its claim to fame was making toilet paper for Queen Victoria. That's absolutely true, you can look it up. But there's been many tragedies at Paper Mill Playhouse as well, including several fires, including one in 1980 that brought the entire theater to the ground. It reopened in 1982 and has become one of the biggest and best regional theaters in the country. But some of the people along the way have decided to stay. Theaters have been known as haunted places, lots of spirits, lots of energy, and we're going to tell you about some of those stories today. We're going to start with Paper Mill Playhouse's producing artistic director, Marc OB. Marc was at rehearsal one night for a premiere production of Meet Me in St. Louis, but one of the actresses may not have been alive. Let's hear Marc's story right now.
Hi, my name's Marc OB, and this is my Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story. I think through my life I've had several encounters with ghosts. I mean, I'm a believer. There's been several times in my life that I've felt another presence and been aware of something sort of supernatural happening. But one specific thing that happened to me at Paper Mill happened during Meet Me in St. Louis, which is a show that takes place at the turn of the century in St. Louis, and right before the big World's Fair. And it was at the end of one of the tech rehearsals, and I was left in the theater, out in the seats by myself. I was just finishing up with notes, and the cast had been gone, and most of the crew was out of the building, and one of the guys had put the ghost light out on stage and sort of said goodnight, and I was pretty sure I was there by myself. And I was reading some notes, and I just felt another presence, and so I looked up, and on stage there was, on the other side of the ghost light, I couldn't really see clearly, but on the other side was a woman who seemed to be still in her costume. I thought she was an actress, and she said to me, "What time tomorrow?" And I just looked down at my notes for a second to look at the schedule, and when I looked up, she was gone. And I went up on stage, and then I realized that everybody else was out of the building, so it was a little creepy, but I just assumed it was a friendly presence saying hello. And that's my Paper Mill ghost story.
Thank you, Marc. That was a tremendous ghost story. And that ghost light is a theater tradition that has been going on for ages. That was Marc's Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story. Now let's hear a ghost story from our box office manager, David Stepper. Now, David often works late and by himself. Now, when a patron has an extreme experience at the theater, with all of that energy and all of those spirits, they might just stick around a little longer. And can a ghost communicate through a telephone or other electronic devices? Let's hear David's story, and you decide.
Hi, my name is David Stepper, and this is my Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story. Box office manager. I'm normally here late at night after shows. One night, it was about 2 years ago, it was actually the press night, our opening night for our production of Les Mis, and during the day before, we had an elderly gentleman who had to be taken to the hospital. There was an accident, and later on that night, after the show had ended, it was probably about 11:30. I was here pretty late. There's a phone, an emergency phone, in our lobby, and this is after all the lights were turned off, all the doors were locked. I was the last one left in the building. The emergency phone under the stairs in our lobby starts to ring, and it rings for about half an hour. Normally this phone only rings during a show when we have there's an emergency at home or something with one of our patrons, and his phone just kept ringing and wouldn't stop ringing and wouldn't stop ringing, and it started to freak me out a little bit. I was in the box office, so I started to come out of the box office. I'm like, okay, I'm going to answer this phone, and I get about halfway over to the phone. After about half an hour, it stops ringing as I get into the lobby there, and it gets really cold, and just really, really freaky sort of moment, and I just go back to the box office, lock everything up, and get out of there because it just felt really, really weird. And later on that week, we actually found out that the gentleman who had been at the show that afternoon had died later that night. So I don't know, but it might have had something to do with the phone, the emergency phone ringing later that night. My name is David Stepper, and that is my Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story.
Thank you, David, for that spooktacular story. This is Paper Mill Playhouse Ghost Stories. Our next story features a former Paper Mill Playhouse employee, Susan Spidell. We'll call her Susie. Susie was our former director of education and has some very spooky stories from her time at Paper Mill Playhouse. How long would you stick around if you heard footsteps in the middle of the night going back and forth by your office door? Or what if you heard piano music when the theater was dark? Let's find out what Susie did in her Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story.
Hi, I'm Susan Spidell, and this is my Paper Mill ghost story. I was employed by Paper Mill for many years, first as a development and fundraising associate, and then as the director of education later on. But when I first started in the development department, we hosted a fundraising event, which was an international food fair and silent auction. It was a big outdoors event. And of course, on the day that we were having the event, it rained and poured, torrential downpour all day. So we spent about 12 hours during the course of the day reimagining the event and moving everything inside the lobby area and the upper lobby, the art gallery of the theater. At the end of the night, after all the patrons had left and had gone home and things had actually gone surprisingly well, the person who was my boss, John McEwen, who was our director of development at the time, and I sat down on the stairs in the upper art gallery to relax and kind of debrief and give a little post-mortem on the event. And we were sitting there having a beer and just relaxing and saying we pulled it off and decided that we weren't going to do any more cleaning up. We were going to save it for the next morning, and we were going to do one or two things and then go home. And John got up and left to go to his office, and I was alone in the art gallery. And I saw a big pile of kind of plates and things on a table where people had eaten and had just put their paper plates and things. And I got a trash bag, and I thought, well, let me just get rid of the food waste. And I piled it all in a big trash bag. And as I walked back across the art gallery to head down the stairs and go to the back entrance and put the garbage out, I felt this chill. There was like a column of cold air. And I walked right through it, and it stopped me. And I was freezing suddenly, and it was kind of a moist, damp chill. So that freaked me out a little bit, and I didn't know what that was. But I thought, oh, it's, the air conditioning clicked on for some reason. Who knows what it is? So I took the garbage out, went back into the theater, or into the lobby, rather, to wait for John. And as I was sitting there waiting, I heard piano music. And I was pretty sure that John and I were the only ones in the building at that moment. It was probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. And the piano music continued for a while. But I couldn't recognize the song. I thought it couldn't be someone rehearsing or someone in the theater. And the theater was locked anyway, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then it stopped. It just stopped abruptly. And a minute or two later, John came back from his office, and he had come along the back hall of offices and into the lobby from the other side where I was sitting. And he said, "Okay, let's go, we'll leave." And as he did, he kind of looked at me and said, "Did you hear piano music just a minute ago?" And I was like, "Yes." And he said, "I think we're alone in the building." And I was like, "Yes." And so we both left very quickly, locked the building up, and went home. That's the only time I ever heard music. There was one or two other times when I'd be working on a grant or in my office late at night, finishing up some things. No performance going on, nothing happening in the theater. The rest of the staff had gone home, and I'd be sitting in my office, and I would hear footsteps. And they would always walk in the same pattern, past the green room. You could hear them past the green room, and down the hall of offices, the upper floor of administrative offices. And then they'd stop, and they'd get to a certain point. And a couple of times I got bold enough to kind of go to the door as I would hear these footsteps. And it wouldn't change. They would just continue, and it was always the same number of footsteps in the same amount of time. And it always sounded like a woman's high heels. And those are my paper mill ghost stories.
Thank you so much, Susie. I don't know if I would have stuck around the building for that long, but good for you. This is Paper Mill Playhouse Ghost Stories. We now go to Paper Mill Playhouse Associate Artistic Director, Patrick Peter Parker. Now, Patrick's been at Paper Mill Playhouse for a long time, and Patrick's been in theater all his life. So Patrick understands the presence that you feel when you're in a theater, or those cold columns that you might walk through going down a random hallway. But on a dark and stormy night, Patrick has his own story, right from Paper Mill Playhouse. Let's hear from Patrick Parker right now.
Hi, I'm Patrick Parker, Paper Mill's Associate Artistic Director, and this is my Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story. So I've spent most of my life in one theater or another, and I've been actually fortunate to have several supernatural encounters along the way. So, having been here at Paper Mill Playhouse for many years, I've been quite disappointed that I've never had a supernatural experience or a ghost experience here at Paper Mill. I've heard many other people's stories. I've, walked down a stairway and felt a little cold something or other that I've heard other people describe, but I wanted the real deal. So about 2 years ago, right here in this space, we're in the art gallery at Paper Mill, we were having the children's auditions, callbacks actually, for our production of The Sound of Music. So it was a Tuesday night, the theater was dark, there was no show going on. Once we had finished the auditions, it was probably about 9 o'clock at night, and I realized that I had forgotten to go to the box office before it closed and pick up the master key to lock the front door of the theater. The rest of the theater automatically locks. And it had started to rain earlier in the evening. It was actually a dark and stormy night. I'm not making that up. I got the key. And in the meantime, the storm had really kicked up. I mean, it was bullets of rain just pelting down, huge wind, the trees were blowing, very, very dramatic. And I was a little freaked out because I realized that I was here by myself. And I went to the front door, and I went to look outside to see what was going on because I have a really long drive. I live in Northwest New Jersey, and on a dark and stormy night, it's a pretty treacherous trip. So I opened the door, and very loudly and clearly, I heard a woman yell, "Don't go out there!" And I was like, what? I thought, oh, somebody had come back in. One of my colleagues had tried to brave the storm and the roads were too bad, so she came back in. And I said, "Who's there?" And I didn't hear anything, and so I peeked out the door again and I heard, "Don't go out there!" Well, then I just went, all right, somebody's in the building, I've got to go check it out. So I slammed the door shut, I locked all the locks, and I started walking around the hallways, and there was absolutely nobody here. I realized that any other time in my life that I've had a similar encounter, I was absolutely, totally alone in the premises. And this was the first time in my then 18-year tenure at Paper Mill that I had actually been totally, totally alone in this building late at night. So actually, I would like to thank the Paper Mill Ghost, because I think she realized how bad the roads were, and in the time that I went looking around the building for her, or for whoever I thought was here, the storm sort of subsided. So by the time I had locked up and gotten in the car and got on the road, it wasn't so bad. So thank you, Paper Mill Ghost. That's my Paper Mill Ghost story.
Don't go out there! That's a great story, Patrick. Thank you so much for sharing that with our audience. And happy Halloween to all of you. You're watching Paper Mill Playhouse Ghost Stories. Now we go to someone who works with Paper Mill Playhouse. Paper Mill Playhouse has a beautiful restaurant called the F.M. Kirby Carriage House, and that is one of the most haunted places at Paper Mill. We've had a group from JUMPS, which is Jersey Unique Paranormal Society, come and do an investigation. They found voices, they saw orbs, and Holly Goober, the executive chef for the F.M. Kirby Carriage House, has actually seen a full-fledged apparition. Let's hear Holly's story right now.
Hi, I'm Holly Goober, and this is my Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story. I absolutely believe the carriage house is haunted. Haunted always sounds so negative to me, but I do believe that there's spirits here. And you know, this building has such an incredibly long, colorful history. You know, why wouldn't some spirits want to stick around and entertain us? So I was here at the restaurant one night. We had had a very busy dinner and was feeling pretty tired. And I said, you know what? I'm going to clean up and go home. So I went upstairs to get my coat and my purse, and we usually keep the lights off upstairs, but for whatever reason there was one light on at the end of the hall that night, and I was walking over to the office and pulled out my keys to unlock the door, and out of the side of my eye, just peripheral vision, I see this very tall woman in a lovely long, maybe a dressing gown, or maybe it was a Victorian dress with kind of like almost a train or a bustle coming out the back, just sweeping down the hallway from the closet into the main room upstairs. And I turned to look, and of course there was nothing there when I looked straight ahead, but I had most definitely seen all this out of the side of my eye. Didn't sense anything bad or scary or evil about it. It was just a very, almost like she was ignoring me and just going on about her nightly duties. But there's definitely a sense of spirits in our basement. And again, you know, there's often noises and things inexplicably happening, and you know, going missing and then turning up again somewhere else, and that stuff we've sort of taken into, it's just become fairly common. But seeing that woman walk down the hall, that took me off guard. Again, I wasn't scared, I didn't sense anything bad about her, just an unusual presence. And that was my Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story.
Finally, I bring you my own experience on Paper Mill Playhouse Ghost Stories. Now, I've been at Paper Mill Playhouse for almost 12 years, and in my time I've seen a lot and I've heard a lot, and I spent a lot of late nights at the theater. But there was one particular night that I didn't stay very long at all. This is my Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story. I serve as Director of Press and PR here at Paper Mill, so I'm often here late at night, specifically after photo shoots, production photo shoots. And we did a production photo shoot for the Full Monty with Elaine Stritch, and I was in my office uploading pictures. It was like 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning, and it's always been very creepy here at night. Paper Mill has a very long history, had 3 fires, people have died here, and I'm not so much of a believer in the supernatural, but this night kind of changed my mind. So I'm in my office, it gets very, very cold, and all of a sudden I start smelling smoke. So I kind of check things out, I wander the halls, I go into the auditorium, nothing. And I don't smell the smoke anymore, so I go back to my office, and I'm there, and then I smell smoke again. And as I get up to turn around to check it out, a shadow just goes by my door. And as soon as I get out into the hallway, there's nobody there, but the smell of smoke is very, very strong. So I was pretty freaked out at that point, but I went back to my desk, and I'm uploading photos, I'm checking out what we shot that night. And all of a sudden, I have a monitor in my office that's on the far wall. And I start hearing piano music. And I've heard this story before from other Paper Mill employees that sometimes they hear piano music when there's no piano music. And I never thought that could happen, and specifically through an electronic monitor. So there's only one place that sound could come from, which is the stage. So I head up the back staircase, walk down the hallway, go into the mezzanine section. The theater is dark. There's no sound. Go back to my office. I hear the music through the monitor again. I check it out again. This happened 3 times. And then I decided to leave. That is my Paper Mill Playhouse ghost story.
You've been watching Paper Mill Playhouse Ghost Stories, brought to you by Hometown Television. Now, as you could hear, theaters are a great place to find paranormal activity. And most people think it's because of the tremendous energy that is inside a theater and really sits in the walls of a theater. There's applause, there's actors, there's emotion, so you can imagine why spirits would want to spend some time at a theater. So next time you're at Paper Mill Playhouse, take a look behind your shoulder and see what you can find. We'd like to thank you for watching, wish you a very safe and happy Halloween, and don't forget to follow both organizations, Paper Mill and Hometown Television, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and check out Hometown Television's on-demand features. Thank you so much for watching, and next time you're at Paper Mill, look for me.